You want to dominate your dynasty startup? Well, it's not about drafting stars. It's about building sustainable empires. It's time to go on the hot seat. But first, before we dive in, quick heads up, the Football Guys 2025 Draft Guide is available for pre-order. Beautifully designed, collector-worthy print publication packed with expert analysis, cheat sheets, and proven strategies to help you gain an edge on the competition this season. I've been making print magazines for over 30 years now. It's not a stretch to say this is the best I've ever worked on, but I want you to be the judge of that. We printed a limited run of these high-quality, oversized magazines loaded with exclusive articles from all your favorite football guys. So hit the pre-order page. It's on shop.footballguys.com, or just go to the Football Guys website and you will find links there. And with that, I'm going to decide how to execute the perfect dynasty startup draft from round one all the way through the roster depth portion of the program with the one and only Mike Faiella. You know him at Daddy's Home FF. He's from DLF Football, the producer of the SFB Podathon, my favorite producer of the SFB Podathon, because maybe he's the only producer. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing great, buddy. 3 times in 2 weeks I get to hang out with you. How lucky am I?
This has been fantastic. All right, let's get this ball rolling. We have limited time here. And when I think dynasty, like my co-host on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, Football Diehard Show, Mike Dempsey, he knows a lot. When he wants to find something out, he asks you. So we'll go there. So let's just start out, early on. What's the go-to strategy in the first 2 to 3 rounds of a dynasty startup?
So the thing is, when I'm in a dynasty startup, I'm actually going best player available, not only for the first 2 or 3, but about 4 or 5 rounds. At that point, what I'm doing is I'm taking a look around there, and I'm evaluating not just my roster, but also taking a look at the people around me to figure out, am I a win now contender, or am I looking at someone that's maybe going to have a 2 or 3 year play? From there, that's when I'm going to shape my board for the remainder of rounds when it comes to age. However, in terms of position, unless you're drafting in late August, let's just say, so let's put a little caveat on this. I don't care about positions. I have time to build a lineup. So I am trying to build the best value roster I can. Where people get themselves in trouble is they start stretching for that wide receiver 3 when maybe a quarterback 3 or 4 that's going to have more value is sitting on the board. You could trade for a higher value wide receiver later. So I truly don't care about position. Don't worry about chasing positional value. It's always best player available. But what I do is I shape my draft after the 4th or 5th round based on whether I think I can win it all this year, or whether honestly someone's already beat me to the punch there and I should probably be building more of that like 26 to 28-year-old roster instead of diving in on, say, the Devontae Adams of the world.
Right. It's tricky. That's the tricky part of it for me. I know, like most everyone sits down, they go, I need that anchor wide receiver. That's the guy that's going to carry my team over the long haul. I don't know that that's always the right decision, given the talent waiting for you. So the best player available seems one. Superflex is very popular right now. Our friend Marcus Grant from NFL Network, he often says, if we're trying to make the quarterback, the importance of the quarterback more equal to the NFL game, we're doing it wrong. We're not doing that with Superflex. We're just making scarcity at the position with Superflex. So it feels like a race. Are you running that race in Dynasty Superflex drafts?
I mean, obviously I'm going to elevate the quarterbacks up, but not in terms of the board as like a, more as a volume play. And the reason why I say that, Bob, is when you look at Superflex, the draft is usually when those lower end QB2 to QB3s are at their cheapest. Nobody thinks they need the Sam Darnolds of the world until the injuries or the bye weeks pop up. So when I'm looking at it, I'm going to have lower value quarterbacks that I'm going to draft in those mid rounds and start to do a small amount of hoarding. Now, don't go crazy. We all know that guy in the Superflex draft that starts with 5 QBs. What I'm talking about is those mid-range quarterbacks, once again, where you can maybe trade them over, say, a running back 3, wide receiver 3, tight end 2, because that's going to land you a lot more after the first injury or bye week pops up of the season. So those are really the quarterbacks that I tend to gravitate towards when the board starts getting a round or 2 deep where the value is fairly similar and you're not going to miss out on a home run hitter.
Right. I mean, there is something to be said for a little bit of hoarding there. I'm not going to overdo it, but depriving others of assets not only deprives them of assets, it might win you some assets in terms of draft capital when people are trading later on. So be mindful of that. So what's the biggest mistake not Bob Harris, but what's the biggest mistake people make early in their dynasty startups.
So I'm going to belabor the point a little bit about the fact that drafting a lineup is the number one biggest mistake. I want to call that out, but in the interest of, making conversation and being a little unique, for me, it's putting too much stock in age. I think one of the things, Bob, that people think is that a dynasty league is going to last the duration of a career, where most dynasty leagues are lucky to make it 3 or 4 years. Let's face it, we all have our anchor league that's been around for how many years? You and I, probably a lot longer than most of the listeners, have a league that's probably older than, teenagers at this point. But most dynasty leagues are looking at 3 to 5 years. So I'm not drafting outside of a 3-year window, making really a 23-year-old and a 26-year-old about equal value for me. And the biggest mistake I see is people drafting a subpar young player over a producing player that's already shown it in the NFL that has 3 or 4 good years left. That seems to be the biggest mistake. And you come out with all these puppies on your roster, half of them end up getting cut, don't make the starting lineup. You end up with how many Zach Charbonnets, how many, D'Angelo Williams back. Like, there's so many players, D'Angelo Henderson, so many players that we dove into when they were young that never even made a dent, and we were picking them over productive vets. That just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I tend to lead into the older players a little more as an older player myself. At least in the fantasy world, and it feels comfortable for me. But I do think that people way overplay that, and I get some great values on guys. So let's get some specifics on this. I want to know some players that make the perfect foundational picks in a startup right now.
Right now, for me, the first one I'm going to call out is that stud tight end. As someone who lived an entire decade on Travis Kelce, I am doing whatever it takes to try to get Brock Bowers or Trey McBride on my team. I realize that a stud tight end is such a positional advantage. And what you find is, especially where it's so top heavy as it is now with the clear top 2, they're almost impossible to acquire. Going down the list, and we'll go in the order of affordability.
Real quick on that. Like, at what point is, like, looking at the age cutoff that we discussed previously, does George Kittle, like, is there a price point where he looks like appealing, like an appealing piece that maybe you get a couple more years out of and still gives you elite value, but you've got to be looking after that?
Oh, 100%. I think George Kittle's kind of that next grouping with Laporta. We're actually lean Kittle. We just talked about not overvaluing age. I lean Kittle in a 1-quarterback league. That's where we're really talking like 4th or 5th round. Like, once you clear the top 2, Bob, you're going to go through a few rounds of running backs, wide receivers, and a super flex, obviously quarterbacks, before you get to the Kittles of the world. But he really, in a 1-quarterback league, here's your rule of thumb, and I'll give it to you as simple as it gets. When you start looking at quarterbacks, because the high-end positional players have been drafted, so you start thinking Josh Allen, you start thinking Lamar Jackson, you should also start thinking George Kittle. That's really where you're going to know your cliff comes off, is when you start peeling off of running backs and wide receivers, and you say, hey, I should probably start looking at quarterbacks. That's where I'm also mixing in the Kittles and the Laportas of the world.
All right, back to the foundational pieces.
Perfect. So next one, a little more affordable, is Jackson Smith-Njigba. He's a guy who hasn't quite reached elite status yet, but I have him as the most likely to join that group in the coming season. And I think the Cooper Kupp signing has slowed the train a little bit. I mean, when we look at without DK Metcalf, this guy was coming as wide receiver 8. He's 23 years old and was one of the top prospects that we've seen. I know a lot of people are going to say you're a year late on acquiring Smith-Njigba, and you are getting a higher price point than you were last year, but there's still a lot of meat on the bone. And I think people that don't pay the price now are only going to see it escalate next year.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Who else you like in that baseline, that kind of foundation build?
So here's my last one, and he's just such a set it and forget it talent, and that's in like the 5th round. I'm looking at Devonta Smith, 4th or 5th round talent. He is one of the smoothest route runners in the NFL. 6th round in Superflex even. I mean, he has just such a high floor with the ceiling that could be enormous if the Eagles eventually part ways with A.J. Brown. I love getting the Slim Reaper on all my rosters. He's someone I loved coming out of college, just so polished, so good. So Devonta Smith's somebody, again, that his price point will skyrocket when Brown leaves town, which we think he will. There's been whispers of it pretty much every offseason for the past 3. Once he's gone, Devonta Smith moves into that wide receiver 1 category.
Right. I feel like maybe you get a little bit of value on him as well right now. Yeah. Jalen Hurts threw 100 fewer passes last year. The Saquon Barkley effect is real. It is also a limited time thing, right? I guess Barkley is not going to be there forever, dominating that workload. And maybe we see a switch back to a pass heavier offense. I kind of like that play as well because I like my discounts, and I think you're getting that with Devonta Smith for sure. All right, let's talk a little bit about building up the core, where you start looking at your lineup structure. I want to first ask you about balancing positional needs against ADP. What should be the focus, the value or what you need?
It's always value. And what's funny is when I was looking at these questions, Bob, I was typing out straw man, as you know, of my answers, and I didn't scroll down. I probably would have spent less time on ADP at that point, but there's plenty of time before week 1. And honestly, you don't have to make your playoff push until about week 5. So when you're building a roster, your goal is to have it be as valuable in whatever you use to measure value. It could be Dynasty Trade Calculator. I like, some people like Keep Trade Cut. That's not really the tool that I tend to lean towards, but it does give you an idea of what other people are thinking. But whatever you use to measure value, at the end of a startup, you want your roster to be as valuable as possible, meaning that you should always be taking the best player that fits your build. And what I mean by that is, we talked about earlier, if you're going for more of a longer term play, those values will be younger. If you get to the mid rounds, you're trying to win it all. Really hammer those studs that are going to win it for you, but don't worry about position. Get the highest value players you can with every pick.
All right, I'm granting you commissionership, Commissioner Faiella, your ideal lineup structure. If you're setting up a Dynasty startup, how are we playing?
I love unique builds. So for me, I'm going to do a super flex league, only one starting running back, one starting wide receiver, one starting tight end. And I'm going to put as many flexes as we can handle. I'm going to hammer it for 2 reasons, Bob. Number 1, I want people to be unique. And number 2, I love action. So I want that waiver wire to be as drained as humanly possible. Right. So we're going a deep, full flex league where people can get weird with it. You want to do 5 tight ends, knock yourself out. But what we're going to do is we're going to make it as deep as possible, because when you come to a bye week, I want you disgusted with the waiver wire, because I really want people trading. I want to see people making moves, because it allows, not only does it make the league more fun, but it allows those teams that aren't doing well, that are struggling a little bit, to get some value of the pieces they're looking to move off their roster. So we're going to go super deep, but we're going to look really flexy on this one, because it allows people to get weird with it. And that's what you want. You want people to enjoy a league.
All right. If that's the case, Commissioner Mike, I'm going to Team Mike and saying, what's your dream quarterback 1, running back 1, wide receiver 1, tight end 1 look like in the startup? Who are those specific players you're interested in?
Okay, so here's what I came up with. I came up with 2 answers on this, because I'm really chalky with my top at each position: Lamar, Bijan, Chase, and McBride. That's an easy one. But if you want to talk about where we could realistically get one of each player in the first 4 rounds, based on the ADP I have in front of me, hot off the presses from July, here's the way I'm playing it. I'm taking Jamar Chase in the 1st, Trey McBride in the 2nd, Lamar Jackson in the 3rd, and Ken Walker in the 4th. That would be a start that would have me thinking maybe just put the rest on auto draft to give everyone else a chance. So my top 4 are pretty chalky, but that's the build that I really love, because like I said, it nails that position you want. It gives you that Trey McBride, gives you the top wide receiver. Oh man, Lamar is fun. You got to love having Lamar. And then Ken Walker, you and I have talked about him ad nauseum and other shows. If he stays healthy, I mean, he's just an elite player. So that's really a dream spot if you like to diversify your positions at the start of the startup.
I like the order you put him in, the running back last. I mean, I think that's the position we think is the most transitory and the one that we can find new pieces coming in. You and I like Walker, if for no other reason than we like Clint Kubiak, or what the Clint Kubiak offense to be outside zone runs. I mean, and the way that Kubiak talks about Kenneth Walker, find somebody who talks about you the way Clint Kubiak talks about Kenneth Walker and his sub 4.4 speed. And I like and if you're out there listening, you're going, well, I can't get those guys. Use these as archetypes, right? Jamar Chase, maybe you don't get him. You don't have the 1st pick overall. CeeDee Lamb probably fits that mold. Justin Jefferson certainly fits that mold. I think there are other players, young players coming up too. Malik Neighbors is going to fit that mold, and maybe he'll be the guy we're discussing in this spot next year. Brian Thomas Jr. as well. So, and the same with the quarterbacks. I mean, there's the idea is to get the high high-end wide receiver, the high-end tight end, the solid top-tier quarterback, and then the running back that you feel like is a guy that can gain a little ground at a good value. And maybe it's Chuba Hubbard, or maybe it's, you're not worried about the long term and you're thinking Alvin Kamara has one more good year and maybe I can get going this year. So like make those adjustments and kind of use these as archetypes in the way you plan out your game. And I think we all have some degree of flexibility. If you miss out on that top tier of tight ends, how far are you punting?
Oh, for a long time. If I miss out on the 4 that we have mentioned, I will almost always be the last team to draft a tight end. I mean, there are plenty of athletic archetypes. There's plenty of players you can get by with. So for me, once we start having a differential at the position, there's really no reason to stretch. I'm very comfortable with the likes of Tucker Kraft, with the likes of Evan Engram. Like, there are tight ends that go extremely late that I am very comfortable with. What I tend not to do is stretch too far for that middle group, the Njokus, the Kincaids, the Andrews of the world. There's just better value to be had at other positions where I don't think they differentiate themselves. And then remember, too, when you're playing in a dynasty league, what's always going to fall from the sky, if you need a tight end, and remember, you only care about points if you're planning on winning. There's always like the Hunter Henrys of the world for a third-round pick. So it's not a position of need. I love the advantage, but once the advantage is gone, you're never going to see me on the end of a tight end run. Just wait. If you pick one up on the cheap, one of the guys we mentioned, Kraft, Engram, if not, wait till the end, get a Jake Ferguson, or pick up a Dallas Goedert, Hunter Henry type off of the waiver wire.
So you're 5 weeks into the season. You can see where the trajectory of your season is, and you didn't get all your ideal pieces. At what point are you going into, like, is it week 5 or is it a little later that you're going like, okay, it's rebuild time already. I have to start thinking ahead. I'm going to start throwing out offers. I'm going to start looking at what I can do to maybe move up in the draft, all those things.
So you are hitting my heart, because we're talking about every article I've written for DLF. And the second one is rebuild. And what's most important with the rebuild, Bob, is to be first. The first person out of the gate in the rebuild race wins. So you need to know as early as possible, whether it's week 5, hell, it could be week 3. You just lost one of your best players. He's a little older and he's done for the year. You have to be honest with yourself. But the most important thing is to get in early. If you don't, you have to have one of those middling plays where you're going to say, hey, I'm going to play for next year rather than a full rebuild. But what you want is the maximum amount of teams bidding on your assets. So you want to get the dumbest team in your league that thinks they still have a chance. You want their picks. Yeah, you want to start buying injured, right?
Right. I think that's, that's always, and it's a hard decision to make. But also, I think, the other issue is you have to commit to it. Once you say, this is where I'm going, there's no half measures. You have to push it all in. And that's something I've learned over the years. Let's talk a little bit about depth and value and age. And we kind of hinted at it before. How much youth is too much youth on your dynasty roster?
So for me, it's funny. So I'm going to rephrase the question a little bit, because there's no such thing as too much youth. What we're really talking about is what's too much risk. And risk is funny because it's really based on a multitude of factors. How good is your team? How good is the rest of the league? And how far are you from competing? From there, what I do, and we kind of just touched on it, about when I'm at the bottom, I swing for the fences. I'm looking for a guy who's either going to be 1,800 yards or out of the league in 2 years, because I'm going to get him for cheap for someone who's frustrated. I'm going to buy all the risk you can, because the worst thing you can have is a slow rebuild. Right. And remember, if you're not winning, points are bad. Like, points are not good if you're not winning. So what you want to do is build it in a way where, like in cards, you try to shoot for the moon. It might not work out, but if it doesn't, you have the best value draft picks, and you could then turn those into studs. So what you're looking to do is either buy injured so you don't score points, or buy disappointing and hope they hit. But if I'm not in, there's no such thing as too much risk. I am going to have the wildest roster you've ever seen and hope 4 or 5 of them end up in that upper echelon later on in their careers in the next year.
Yeah, I think one of the things we try to do, and it's a kind of a redraft mindset, is when you're adding risk to your roster, you try to mitigate that risk with steadier players or whatever. This is the total opposite of that. You go all in on the risk. You lean into the risk to get some success down the road. It's not a short-term game, people. So veterans, I talked about my propensity towards the older players. Not afraid to draft them. They still got a year. I'm still pretty interested at the right price. I'm usually getting values. When do you target reliable veterans? And are you as eager to get them as frontline players, or would you prefer them as depth?
I'm good with getting them as frontline players. And like I said, it really comes down to after those 4 or 5 picks, where really, Bob, what you can do in the first 4 or 5 rounds. And the reason why I use those as the measuring stick is because you can get productive youth. You're not debating between youth and productivity in the first couple rounds. But once you get past that round, I am either avoiding boring vets at all costs if I'm rebuilding, if I've decided I'm going young because I want those picks to be high, or I'm going all in. So as a competitor, this is where you have a real edge. So I'll give you some examples if you look at current ADP. Going with the Chris Godwin over a Jaden Higgins, going with the round 8 and that's round 7. Round 8, going with David Montgomery over Bashal Tutin, and round 12, going Dallas Goedert over Elijah Arroyo. They're not exciting. They're not going to get Twitter talking, but those are moves that you make. They might, not in the positive, but those are moves that I'm making if I'm competing, because those are guys that are either going to start for me or play significant roles as bye week or injury fill-ins.
I want your favorite mid and late round of value targets.
Perfect. So I'm going to give you guys in the 100, 120, and 150 range. At 101 is the guy that people love to hate, DeAndre Swift. Now, here's the thing about Swift. If you gave just a blank slate and didn't use his name and mentioned his draft capital, his pedigree coming out of Georgia, his offensive coordinator, the fact his team just increased the offensive line, the fact that they didn't draft a running back until I believe round 5, the fact they didn't sign any free agents, you would be throwing all your picks to get this guy, and that's DeAndre Swift. The only thing you hate about him is the way he was used. He was splitting time in Detroit. He was losing carries to Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. And don't get it twisted, he was extremely talented in Philadelphia. He played great, and he actually played really well last year. The amount of breakaway runs he had was outstanding. Now, there is something about DeAndre Swift that bothers me. He somehow comes out of games at high leverage times, and he seems to take himself out. That bothers me a little bit, but at 101, I am all in. If you take a look at the 120s, Darnell Mooney. What is it about Mooney? Is it the 1,000 yards you don't like? Is it the age? He's 26. Like, what do we not like about Mooney? You're already hearing them say they're going to even target him more this year. So the hatred towards Darnell Mooney is killing me right now, and I'm picking him up everywhere and for way too cheap. Be better than that. And then the last one I give you is a rookie, the most disrespected rookie of this class when you look at draft capital, you look at opportunity, and that is Pat Bryant. 157 overall in 1 quarterback leagues, going way below folks that were drafted in the same round as him. And who is he competing with for targets? Evan Engram and Cortland Sutton. Are we really worried about them being the top targets on their team, or do you think there's enough to go around in this offense? I am all in on those 3. Way too cheap. I mean, you're talking 9th round, 11th round, and 13th round for that level of value, rather than just drafting somebody who's already dusty and going to get 800 yards. Give me all 3 of those on every roster I have.
On Swift, I think the thing that you mentioned that's most appealing to me is, everyone talked about we don't think Ben Johnson likes DeAndre Swift. He was traded away from Detroit after his first year there, and all those things. All the things that I like about DeAndre Swift, are the things I like most about him are the moves that weren't made this offseason. They tell you a lot. Pat Bryant, we heard Sean Payton talk about it. We heard George Payton, the GM, talk about it. They used Michael Thomas, that name, in conjunction with Pat Bryant. I think that makes him a little interesting all by himself, but more so the price for sure makes him super interesting given those discussions. All right. So looking at the bench, we're trying to balance upside and we're trying to play it safe and mitigate some risk. What are we doing with handcuffs and other, like, are you interested? Are you insuring your own players?
No, I'm not an own your own handcuff guy personally. It limits upside and it really hinders a chance at a true dynasty. But what I am doing is stacking my bench with your handcuffs and everyone else's. That's my overall goal. Why? Basically, wide receiver is deep. Number one, there's plenty of good wide receivers out there. Obviously, most teams play three at one time rather than one running back. The second thing is that tends to be, and Bob, I'm assuming that you're like me, most dynasty players are, that tends to be my go-to starting position. So I'm usually pretty set there. I can always find points on a waiver wire in a pinch to get wide receivers. As we talked about, I can also find tight ends if I need someone in a pinch. And if we're not talking super flex, you can always find an older quarterback. Sure. But no one spikes more than a backup running back when an injury or ineffectiveness hits. From the days of Ben Tate, you remember the old Houston days of Ben Tate. Arian Foster was going to get hurt every year, and Ben Tate was going to be the number one running back in Houston. We talked about that. Now Zach Charbonnet, Trey Benson. We love a good backup, and we will pay through the teeth for it. So grab them first, and then play the trade game as soon as you can before they prove why they were backups to begin with. But right before their first start is when a backup running back spikes in value like no other position. So my bench is full of them, and I'm just waiting for someone to need them, and I'll be there to sell in that moment.
All right, I'm not just totally fixated on age for any reason in particular, but I am a little bit. What is like? Do you have a cutoff? Like, are you like worried? Like, do you care? Like Derrick Henry heading into well past 30. Are we worried about him? Assuming we're only making a 1 year investment and just working from that angle, or players of that same vintage? How are you handling?
It's funny, like as time passes, it matters less and less, right? Like, and you mentioned it after, the more modern medicine, advanced training, miracles like Derrick Henry, Travis Kelce, Matthew Stafford coming back from a broken back. We were trading these guys because of this arbitrary cliff we put in place 10 years ago that we haven't adjusted. I'm comfortable because I like to win championships. I'm comfortable letting guys end up retiring on my squad without an issue. But picking those guys up for peanuts, we do it too with 200-pound running backs. Like we've decided there's these numbers that just mean they're going to suck. And I don't subscribe to that at all.
Neither does Jameer Gibbs.
Yeah, exactly. At 199, that one extra cookie, he would have been fine. But yeah, no, these are the edges of Dynasty. When people are nervous about them, move in as quickly as you can and grab those, especially like the 28-year-olds, where you might even get a couple of years if you're lucky. You might luck out and get Derrick Henry and seemingly get another decade out of him. That man might play till 50.
I love landing him in pretty much every format this year. All right, let's close this thing out, Mike. Great job too, Mike Faiella. DynastyLeagueFootball.com. You'll find his writing, and you'll often hear him on my radio program, the Football Diehards on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. Fantastic, as you could hear. I want 2 or 3 must-follow rules for startup success. Put a fine point on them.
Perfect. Number 1, do not let the board affect you. Chasing a run is a fool's errand. Instead, take the position being ignored during that run and profit later. Don't let them sucker you in. They're going to try to. Don't do it. Be the engine. Don't be the caboose on every run.
Nice.
Number 2, be water. Fantasy analysts have been selling strategies like fitness influencers sell diets. Just like in fitness, it's calories in, calories out, no matter what they want to tell you. If it's fantasy football, it's points scored, and there is no right or wrong way to accomplish this. So what I want you to do is play the other managers, sucker them into going 0 RB, and let them overpay for those wide receivers, and you scoop up. But what I don't want you to do is chase a position or an age just because someone told you to. And then the last one, and I will always end with this one, Bob. Have fun. This is a game we play that we ultimately have no control over the outcome. So get your guys, talk some trash, offer your trades. But whatever you do when you go to a startup, the only failure is if you're angry. Like, leave with a smile on your face, even if that means stretching for your favorite player. Cool. I don't care, man. Have fun with it. This is a game that we play. Just enjoy it.
Right. I mean, getting criticized by the other people in your league is kind of part of the deal, people. And if you get a player you want out of it, don't worry about it. I want your final underrated draft strategy, please.
Win now. The underrated draft strategy is buying players that score points. Play it like a redraft. If everyone's chasing youth, draft a redraft team. Have Kelsey, have Henry, have Stafford, have every old guy we talked about, Devontae Adams. The fact is youth is sexy, but championships never die. Win the title whenever possible. Trade your picks, trade your youth, win when you can, because you never know when it's going to come around again.
Absolutely. The perfect startup means balancing the long-term value with one-year competitiveness. Where you're at in your build might decide that. How your draft is going might decide that. Being agile in your draft and after your draft are going to be the keys to success. I want to thank Mike Faiella once again. Catch his work at Dynasty League Football. Also follow him on the X Machine at Daddy's Home FF. Don't miss it. Great follow. We'll be back next time. I want you to go sign up for the Football Guys Daily Email Update right now. It's up and running. It's free. Get the biggest stories in football, summarized, explained, delivered straight to your inbox every single day from me, Sigma Bloom, C. Salami, and also check out the magazine, Football Guys 2025 Draft Guide. It is an impressive piece of work. Go to the website. You'll find ads there. Go to our X feed. You'll find ads there. Go to shop.footballguys.com. And also come back next week for another edition of On the Hot Seat.